It was a big mistake I ever done. I will learn from
I
it.
understand that. I understand what you're saying, but what I'm saying is I kind of picked that
You have to go
up.
live. You have to go
Hey,
live. Well, that's hello and good evening. Um, I'd like to before we start, I'd like to apologise about a post that I kind of like mentioned on Monday. Really, I'm sorry about that, and I am not going anywhere, and I really apologise about the post. It was something that I did on a issy fit, and I really apologise. So, thank you for all your messages. I must have had 120 odd messages about a stupid video that I went over, but thank you very much for all your help, and I am not going anywhere. I promise you guys. Okay, Susan, hello.
hello, Stevie.
Stevie, I like that name, Stevie. When you can always know when people are kind of like horrible to you. It's, especially my wife sometimes. She says to me, "Stephen,"
Oh,
then you know that you're on the complete and the wrong. You know what I mean?
you might as well give up there.
Yes. Okay. What I want to talk about today is I was reading your blog. Okay, and it's got ways to support your mental health after your divorce. And because I remember I'm a person who's been married a few times, and you know, and after some of those marriages and stuff, I've actually kind of like really kind of was depressed over those marriages. I was also one of them. I was completely suicidal over it because I had children and everything, and it's so tough this season, isn't it, to get your mind around it because divorce is bad, really, isn't it?
For sure, for sure. And I think we talk about the aftermath of divorce, but where I'm coming through with this is that it's often the precursor. It's so, by the way, there's quite a lot of background noise coming through, Steve. I don't know if you've got papers or something. Quite a lot of background noise.
Background
But
noise, okay,
yeah, in
okay,
terms of rustling and clicking and things. But not that's better. Yeah.
okay.
But yeah, as when I'm looking at a situation like that, what I'm thinking is that it's often the preamble, it's the stuff beforehand, because we start out feeling good, we're newly married, we're setting up home together, maybe thinking about children, all loved up and sharing and caring and all the gorgeous stuff. And gradually, slowly, over a period of time, that can erode into disdain, disgust, nitpicking, bickering, possibly full blown arguments, lack
Mm,
of sex interest, all sorts of different things that are starting to become more alienated. And that is often the stuff that we take into the divorce. The feeling of low self esteem, the feeling of low confidence, the feeling of being unattractive, perhaps a failure. Here I go again, maybe letting family down, maybe the loss of friends, your financial situation's gone, what's going to happen to children. So there's an awful lot of stuff, an awful lot of baggage, an awful lot
mm,
of issues that you're taking into the divorce and then having to start again. Brand new, alien territory, maybe having to look at different ways of earning money, maybe not earned money for ages, you know, maybe having to start out with the children and explain to them, and they may or may not have taken it too well. Perhaps you're seeing your ex swanning off into the sunset with loads of cash, appearing to be very happy with a new partner, perhaps. So it can be quite a fragile time where it does impact on our mental health, and that's the starting point for quite a lot of people after their divorce, and that's a difficult bit often.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree. It's like luckily me and my wife, it's like, I think on Sunday, I hope I got this right. We've been married around about like 6 years, and we've been together for a long time. For some couples, some people get divorced over sex, don't they? Because when you've been married for a long time, you know, a partner probably doesn't want it no more, and it's really kind of like, but the other partner does want sex. Then you have arguments about it and everything else like that. But
But it's
luckily,
it, it's drilling down into where that starts from, because there may, what if a person looks at it properly, there will more than likely be reasonable reasons why somebody has gone off sex. So it may be that somebody's, women sometimes after they've had children, they're concerned about their body, they're concerned about stretch marks, they maybe have lost sense of feeling. It
yeah,
may be that gradually over a period of time, one or both of them put a little bit of weight on, perhaps not as fit as they were. Stress can be a biggie, impacting
yeah,
on our libido if we're overworked, worried about money, worried about the boss, worried about being overtired, got a lot of traveling to do, all sorts of different things. These are things that drill down to a need
yeah,
to improve the communications so
yeah,
that
yeah,
we
yeah,
we can talk to each other and say, look, I'm really struggling at the minute. I still love you, I still find you attractive, but I really have no energy. Full blown intercourse, full blown sex may not be on the cards, but they can still be touching and
yeah,
cuddling and maybe, I don't know, taking a bath together, rubbing each other's feet or shoulders while you're watching the telly. There can still be closeness, and there can still be intimacy and hugging and touching each other and having time, going to bed together at the same time and having a little bit of a chat or something, even if sex isn't on the cards. So it's keeping those channels of communication open
yeah,
so that people don't start feeling, he or she doesn't fancy me. Am I ugly? Am I unattractive? Am I boring? Have they got somebody else? Can be a
mm,
whole load of
mm,
things that are going through the person's mind, which fuel mental health issues, low mood, perhaps depression, anxiety, stress, all those sorts of things.
mm. When I first, luckily, I knew Michelle from school. But the trouble is, and we got together years after, she was in another relationship and she was with somebody and had children and everything. And when I met Michelle, she had quite a few children. But the trouble is, what I felt was like, I thought, mm, do she fancy me and things like that? And sometimes in relationships, sometimes like sex, in the beginning of the relationship, it's fine,
Mm.
right? It's really good. But then years go down the line and it stops, and you're thinking, oh, is it me or is it your partner? And things like that. But really, sex is not everything, you know?
Absolutely. And like I say, intimacy for a lot of people can be almost more important, because if we're not 100% fit or not 100% high libido, or we're mismatched, which often is the case, or we go to bed at different times, or we've got different stresses going on, then it is important to keep close, keep intimate. You don't want to be doing a house share with a best mate.
No.
That's the situation for a lot of people. They don't want to be living under the same roof and saying, "Oh, on the way home, honey, can you get
Mm,
a bag of sugar, or can you get a pint of milk, or can you pick up the dry cleaning?" We don't want to devolve into that. We can do a house share. So if we're wanting to live with a lover, a close person, have an intimate relationship, then we have to do the things that support that. And relationships take hard work. So we have to sometimes say, yes, okay. Yeah, I mean, women don't just want some guy to say, the foreplay isn't, are you awake, love? It's and roll over, and that's the thing. Often the point about relationships and intimacy is, it's the, as I said already, it's the foreplay. Now, foreplay can be conversations,
mm,
it
mm,
can be helping with the washing up, It can be saying, let's sit together and watch your TV program, or let's go to bed early tonight
Mm.
together, love, or whatever it might be, or reading a book together, or sitting quietly doing the crossword or something. That can be intimacy. And those are the things that when you then go to bed and you feel heard, you feel listened to, you feel conversed with, you feel respected, your opinions are taken into account. That is the stuff that puts a woman, and sometimes a man, into a better mood. You know, they're more
Mm.
receptive to feeling inclined to want to be closer. And so it's not just being dived on and you know, effectively just having 5 minutes, 10 minutes release. It's about much more than that. And that's the whole point. That's what the word intimacy is about, really, not just sex. And I think leading up to divorce, where a lot of those channels of communication have, you know, been forgotten about, moved away from, put to one side, you know, discounted because there's not enough time or I'm too busy. That can be where the rot sets in, and it's about avoiding that, really.
Oh yeah, of course it is. Yeah, it's like in any relationship, we don't go to bed on an argument. We never do. Everything. No, it's honestly we don't do it. Now Stephen here, I put my hands up. Sometimes getting a little tippy, and I go to bed and saying about I just put myself down a bit really. Sometimes I go to bed and I have a little bit of a tiff, and the trouble is then I put a quilt between us. And my wife says to me, "What's wrong with you?" And I'm saying, "Oh well, something that." They say, "Right, before we go to bed, we've got to get this sorted out. Go to sleep." We do.
So you've got your own system in place, which is good.
Yeah,
She
yeah,
recognizes, because you don't need to put a quilt between you to for there to be a divide. It can just be that you move an extra 6 inches across the bed and you've got that space. You're you're flagging up. The pair of you have devised your own method of
yeah, yeah.
letting each other know you're in a bit of a mood. She spots that. She could just ignore it and think, oh, I can't be bothered. But fortunately, the both of you have worked this between you, and so you talk
Yeah.
about it, and that's great. And that's that you're communicating, and she's picking up on that, and that's fabulous. Some people, when they are sort of a bit further down the line, they perhaps don't care. You know, that one of them might think, oh, thank goodness the quilt's between us. I can move over on my side and have a good night's sleep and ignore the silly person. So it's a fact that you know it could be. I mean, that could be the next step in a relationship
I
that's
can't,
deteriorating.
Susan, I can't ignore my wife. I'll tell you why. If I've tried it and she starts kicking me then.
Good girl, good
And she,
girl.
good girl, she does. If I ignore her, she'll tell you. If I'm
Yeah.
in bed and if I ignore her, she gets her cold feet and she bungs it on my legs, right? She'll tell you, and my back, right? And you kick me, don't you? Yeah, she kicks me. There you go.
Yeah.
You
So
know,
that's a good thing for you too. For a lot of people, it's there's not that same sensitivity. And I think sensitivity, tuning into each other, these are the important things to do.
hmm, hmm, hmm. She's just laughing there. I was just taking a look at her thinking, um, the trouble is, so let's get on to divorce because it's like one person when they kind of like they love their partner and all of a sudden they're kind of like going for a divorce and they got the children and they got the families and everything. It's all in the air and it's a lot of anger. It can be a lot of anger coming and someone's fighting for the house and someone wants a lot of money and all sorts. And the mental health plays on it. They get depressed and they get really low mood. What can be done?
Well, I think there are a few things that can be done. I think one is to try very hard not to get pushed into making any rapid or hasty decisions. Thank you, Jacqueline. Um, so I think the problem is that it is about saying, okay, I'm not going to get rushed into making any hasty decisions. So check out if you've got more if you've got friends available, if you've got somewhere where you can go and live in the short term, family perhaps or whatever. One, it helps save a little bit of money, and two, it means you're not committing to anything too radical, and three, hopefully it means the kids can perhaps stay at the same school if there are children. So it's about pacing yourself and saying, okay, yes, I know things have been settled perhaps financially, or things have been settled so that it's time for me to make decisions. But sometimes we're not in the right place to actually feel confident enough. And it can be good to take a little bit of time and maybe do a house share. If you're doing a house share with somebody with a similar situation to you, you've got companionship. You've maybe got people you can talk things through with. You maybe get a bit of help if you've got mental health issues, you're stressed out, or you need a little bit of support with the children. They can be, or maybe you've got to go back to work and you can double up what you're doing in the sense of looking after what's going on. So that can be really important. You've got somebody to eat a meal with maybe in the evening, that kind of thing. And sometimes even going sharing with family. I mean, I've got clients who have gone home to mum and dad, and they're finding it very, very stressful, but they're saving cash and they do have people around who love them, know them, and care for them. So it's not easy necessarily going back to mum and dad, but it can be a good short-term thing. In terms of divorces at the minute, yes, I think there are a lot more divorces than they used to be, because at one time women particularly weren't earning as much as they are now. One time, 1 or 2 generations back, the woman stopped work after she got married. The man was supposed to be the main provider, so people had to stay together. They didn't have the same options, and divorce was considered very, very much a failure. It was a very bad thing. There was a lot of stigma attached to it. Gradually, 70s, 80s, women have become a lot more contributing, career-minded, focused, involved in the whole household and career structure. So, yeah, I think people aren't as prepared to put up with negative or unhelpful or unsupportive relationships. And so there are a lot more divorces. Some people reckon it's 50 to 60% of marriages end in divorce. And people are likely nowadays to say, I'm calling it quits, I don't need this. So whether that's good or bad is debatable, but certainly there is an argument for saying, I mean, I know I have a lot of clients who are getting divorced, and there is an argument for saying that those people, nobody gets married wanting to get divorced. And a lot of people fight, and really try very hard to pull it together and retrieve the relationship. But sometimes we have to say, I can't do this anymore. And so, as I say, going back to the whole thing about not being pushed into decisions, share how you're feeling, talk it through. I mean, that's a very supportive thing to do. Often we feel we're on our own. We feel there's nobody understands. I'm the worst person on the planet. But sharing how you're feeling with friends or on online group or colleagues occasionally, if that's viable for you to do that, sometimes letting it out and how you're feeling and letting people know that you're struggling perhaps a bit, accepting invitations. Somebody says, come for a coffee, go, even if they're not the flavor of the month for you, even if it's not the most fantastic person that you necessarily choose, just go and appreciate the gesture and sit and quietly have a coffee with somebody and maybe talk about something else. A lot of people find it quite useful to have friends who say, will you shut up talking about this now? Because otherwise it can become the one topic of conversation. Every time you see your mates, they're saying, how you doing? And every time you see those mates, you talk about it and you go through it again, and you won't believe what's happened this week, and you won't believe what the solicitor said, and you won't believe this and that and the other. Shut up about it sometimes. Give yourself some fresh air. Talk about something else. Talk about whatever it is, that jungle thing now in the castle, or Strictly Come Dancing, or anything, but change the subject so that you give yourself a little bit of time out and a little bit of respite. Those are important things to do.
Yeah. Let's look at the ways of support for your mental health after the divorce.
Okay.
What do you advise?
Well, I think a biggie is sharing how you're feeling with friends, confidants, somebody who you trust, maybe even a religious person. I think accepting too that your ex feels differently about you. It can be that we sometimes think maybe if I just did this, or I tried harder, or we had a conversation or whatever, we could pull it together or whatever. But those criticisms, those negatives that came your way that led to the divorce, perhaps they're not necessarily genuine comments about you. We were talking before about things people say about us, and we did a show a week or two back about people judging us.
Yes.
And the truth is that sometimes people say things about us which are more a reflection of them and where they're at and what's going on in their lives than it is a criticism of us. So if somebody says to me, I don't love you anymore, I don't find you attractive, you don't suit me anymore, you're not intelligent enough, you're not whatever, I can take those as personal comments about me, or I can just sit back and go, okay, we as a couple have moved on. We
Mm.
as a couple are now seeing things in a slightly different way. We've grown up and grown differently. Instead of growing together, we may have grown apart. This relationship was valuable for a time, but I'm in a different place now. And sometimes we have to accept that. It's not about you or me. It's about sometimes we have moved on, and our tastes have changed, our views have changed,
Mm.
our wants and wishes have changed, and that can be okay.
It's all good though, what you're saying, but
Yeah.
sometimes it's difficult to move on, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Of course it is. And that can be a time where we have to grieve. I mean, let's not forget about the role of grieving in a relationship. One of my books dealing with death is not just talking about physical death, the ending of a relationship, the ending of a job, the ending of our good health into poor health. All
Mm.
those transitions can be times that justify periods of absolute devastation and grief, because we have to readjust, we have to come to terms with things about ourselves, perhaps we have to accept different views and limitations, and sometimes process negative stuff that's coming our way. And it can be difficult sometimes to have somebody say, I don't like you, or your life is limited now, or that's not possible anymore. And we can feel stuck and trapped and angry and annoyed and frustrated because we want to. And it's not working out that way. So sometimes we have to suck it up, if you like, and say,
Mm.
okay, it is what it is. Where am I now in my life? And it's not just how we react to things and kick off. Sometimes we have to pause, breathe, take a few moments for ourselves, and then learn to respond. This is what's happening now. What can I do to fix it? What can I do to improve it? What can I do to help me move through this? And that can be the biggie. But yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Grieving is often a part of that, which is why I said don't rush into buying somewhere. Don't rush into changing your job. Don't rush into suddenly deciding to move to Spain or something. It
Mm.
can be important to take a little bit of time to just tread water and work out and work through what's best for you long term.
Mm. Because at the moment lots of things are going on in it with coronavirus, and that's really tough as well with marriages as well. It's like we're lucky. I'll tell you what, I'm a very lucky person with my wife concerned, because we can put up with each other, except for our television programs. But you got to give and take when you're married. You just got
Yeah,
to give and take.
yeah.
And
But
I find
sometimes it's not a balance. Sometimes it's not an equal thing. Unfortunately, sometimes we don't take turns. It's your turn to give and my turn to take. Oh, tomorrow it's my turn to give and your turn to take. It rarely works out like that. And sometimes you've got one person who feels like they've done all the giving since forever, and the other person appears to be doing all the taking, and that can be very, very difficult. But again, that's where communication comes in, because if one person's working away a lot, or they're in a stressful job, or they're struggling with their health, or with young children, or whatever, then they're not necessarily in a good mood. They're not necessarily in a position to do a lot of giving or be as supportive. And that's where understanding, communication, sharing how you're feeling, talking things, and trying to find little windows for half an hour for coffee together or something, or where they're really, really important.
mm, I think, because I think couples need that time together, don't they?
Yeah, Yeah.
Yeah,
And it has to be
definitely.
treated as important. I sometimes use the example that if you were making an appointment with an incredibly important contact, I don't know, somebody who was offering you an opportunity to do with radio, or somebody who was opportunity to do with work, or whatever it might be, some brilliant opportunity, and they said to you, I'll see you at 2 o'clock on Friday. You both agreed it. You would definitely move hell and high water to keep that appointment. There'd be no
Mm,
way that would be missed, that appointment. Well, what I say to people is make that appointment with yourself. And if you
mm,
make an appointment with yourself, with you as a couple, and you say this is important us time, unless the roof's falling off the house or something, you keep that appointment and you treat it as sacrosanct, because it is. And just because your relationship feels good at the minute doesn't mean you don't have to tend it. Doesn't mean it doesn't need nurturing. And sometimes you really have to invest time in keeping that good relationship good, and tending it like we would. You don't just plant a load of seeds and water them and then say, right, see you next year, guys. You go
mm,
in and you regularly weed and hoe and do whatever it is people do in gardens, so
yeah.
that they grow and they blossom and they thrive. And that's what we need to do with our relationships.
Yeah, yeah, we do, don't we? And I think so. But the trouble is, as you said in the beginning, there's a great big high rate of divorce at the moment.
Yeah.
You know, and I was reading something the other day about it in the church magazine or something. I think it's about 60%
Mm.
divorce rates. You know, and it's
Yeah,
probably
but
more than
we've gotten out of the habit, though, haven't we, of taking things to get fixed. So if I have I don't know, if I have a TV set, or I have an iron, or I have something, I don't know, a lawnmower or whatever it might be that breaks down, do I take it to the repair shop or do I throw it in the bin? These days, we don't take things to get them fixed. We don't have a fix it mentality anymore. And I think
no.
that also applies with relationships. I know, I mean, I got brought up in the job for life culture, and you got a job. And the idea was, I remember my dad saying to me and my brother and my sister, go and get a job in a good company and you'll be there till the day you retire. And that was aspirational. That was what
Yeah.
you wanted to do. These days, my clients, I mean, we all got made redundant, including my dad, but best thing that ever happened to me. And a lot of people say that after they're made redundant. But the truth is, a lot of my clients now think it's incredible if they're in the same company for more than 2 and 3 years.
Mm,
So, and if you are there for more than 2 or 3 years, you're seen as a bit of a dead wood, or somebody who's not aspirational, or somebody who's not flexing for change. And
mm,
so what we have these days is if it's not working, move on. If I
mm,
don't like it, change.
mm,
If I'm not happy, go somewhere else. And I think we tend to apply that to some extent to our relationships and our
mm,
situations. And so rather than fighting to try to fix something, we go online and we look for another replacement person, or we look for somebody else, or we just say, you know what, I'm having a bit of time on my own, it's not worth it, I don't do relationships, or something. I'm not saying
mm,
everybody's like that, but I think a lot of people apply that mindset to relationships. And
mm,
kind of that's okay, but it's not okay. And it
mm.
and it does negate the value of trying, and as you said before, working hard, and learning about each other, and learning to be
Mm.
tolerant and forgiving and
Relation,
understanding and empathic.
relationships are really hard, though. They're
Mm,
tough. It's not
mm,
easy. You just can't go into a relationship and everything's there and tick on for about 90 years.
sure.
It's not good. It's not going to happen. You know what I mean? And but the trouble is, I think it's tough. And you got to kind of like sometimes, you've got to give in. I've learned to give in sometimes, and I just gonna, and that's it. So, but we
And it's
we
giving,
went.
if you're giving in, I think it's also giving in gracefully, because I think
Yes,
another thing
yes,
that
I do that. Yes, yeah,
we can
yeah.
do, I'm not necessarily targeting you, but I'm meaning that sometimes you get people give in, and they score it. I mean, I've got clients, I do relationship counseling, and I get people who say, in June last year, my partner, and the person sat there, in June last year, I went to see your mom and she said this to me and you didn't support me, or whatever. And they have this catalogue of failings and issues and examples of when they were wronged, which they may have perceptually forgiven and moved on from, but actually, you know, on the 17th of June and the 23rd of August, there's not a lot of forgiving going on with those situations. And I think sometimes
brought up again, isn't it? Yeah,
absolutely. So we have to learn to say, if I'm forgiving it, then I'll let it go. I don't need to say, and here we go again. The time when you did this. And that's a problem sometimes when couples are communicating, they get entangled in rehashing examples over and over and over again, and they never get anywhere. So when I do couples counseling, I will say, we don't use examples. Stop using examples. Just talk about drill it down, find out what really bothered you. So it's not about we went to visit your mum and she was horrid. It was that I feel you need to be more supportive of me. That's what the issue is.
So
it's sticking to the point. It's finding out what the real nitty gritty behind the hurt is, behind the disrespect, and allowing yourself to heal that and understand it more.
Yeah, that's totally right. Gosh, we come to a time again. We've got to go.
There you go. You see,
it goes quick, doesn't it? It goes quick.
Yeah, absolutely.
Every week it goes so quick.
For sure.
I love talking to you.
As I say, there are articles on my website, lifestyletherapy.net. Anybody who's interested can have a look on there. They're free to access. I don't collect email addresses or anything. Go and have a look. I've written 3 books, but in terms of there's videos, all sorts of things, and I'm very happy for people to just go and have a look, because there might just be a few nuggets in there that help you get through. So lifestyletherapy.net. Excellent.
There you go, guys. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Goodbye. Oh.
There you go, guys. So thank you very much for Susan. You know, she's very good. She's very knowledgeable. Please look her up. I'm going to be back in a bit, around about 9 o'clock. And until then, cheerio.